In the meantime, the World Health Organization is reporting of tremendous progress in the research and development of finding a vaccine that deals with SARS-CoV-2. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says trials are providing a fair bit of hope in ending this pandemic.
With the latest positive news from vaccine trials, the light at the end of this long, dark tunnel is growing brighter. There is now real hope that vaccines, in combination with other tried and tested public health measures, will help to end the pandemic.
It's possible that we will have a number of different vaccine candidates that can be used in the fight against this disease, because we would like to provide access to as many efficacious and safe vaccines as possible so we can cover the population around the world. Remember, we have to cover a huge number of people, billions and billions of people. This is unprecedented, and we will need all the manufacturing capacity in the world to be able to do that.
So let's dig a little deep into the logistics involved in actually getting this vaccine to market. Dr. Fiona Atuhebwe is the Africa Region New Vaccines Introduction Officer at the WHO. She joins us with more on these developments from Brazzaville. Thank you for your time this evening. Walk us through the structure of COVAX and how it works.
Thank you very much. So the COVAX facility is a global collaboration co-led by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and the World Health Organization. And this coalition is working in partnership with both developed and developing countries and also vaccine manufacturers. Really, the COVAX facility aims to accelerate the development and manufacture of the COVID-19 vaccines and to guarantee the fair and equitable access for every country in the world. The bottom line, the bottom principle of the COVAX facility really is pooled demand and pooled supply, which improves the negotiating power of countries. And also it provides manufacturers with this massive demand and assured market. When countries apply to join the COVAX facility, then we assure the manufacturer that once they have invested, because they are going for at-risk investments, committing a lot of funds to invest, knowing that then there's demand down the road once the vaccine is out. The other thing about the COVAX facility is that it has a huge portfolio of vaccines, candidate vaccines that sits in the COVAX. And we know that countries are able to make bilateral deals, but with the benefit of the COVAX facility is that when countries go for bilateral deals with a manufacturer, that's a demand by one country and one manufacturer and one vaccine, so the country risks delays if the vaccine doesn't go through. But with the COVAX facility, there's a huge portfolio. We have a basket of about 10 to 15 vaccine candidates that sits within the portfolio, and a country would stand a better chance of having the available vaccine at the earliest opportunity. And like I mentioned, our aim is equitable supply and to make sure that all countries receive this vaccine at the same time.
Can you give us any more details on which companies are working on those 10 candidate vaccines? Does it include the ones that we've been discussing for most of the last week, the candidates from Moderna, from Pfizer, and the AstraZeneca and Oxford candidate as well?
So for now, it's the AstraZeneca candidate that is in the COVAX facility, but discussions are already ongoing with the Pfizer and Moderna to ensure that, to see if they can get this into the COVAX facility. But for all the COVAX facility is also open to all candidates available, because most important is to ensure that populations are protected, at least from the acute phase of the pandemic, through the use of the vaccine.
Right. So once, for argument's sake, let's assume that these candidate vaccines go through phase 3 trials, they get approval from regulators. Once we get into the question of full-scale production, how then do we decide how to allocate the available doses and in what order? Because obviously within different countries and different populations, there are those who are essentially at higher risk than others, like medical professionals, for instance.
So the principle of dose allocation is really getting the vaccine to both the developed and non-developing, both the self-financing countries and what we're calling the advanced market countries that will receive doses which will be financially subsidized by the COVAX facility. So our aim is to get the vaccines to these countries really at the same time, or as quick as possible at the same time. So far, we have 186 participants in the COVAX facility. These are countries that have subscribed, which represents over 85% of the world's population. So most countries are in this COVAX facility. The prioritization on who gets the vaccine will be done at country level. But at the COVAX facility level, we are aiming to get at least 20% of populations of every country covered by the vaccine. Once the different vaccines are out, that is the minimum we are looking at. But even if we don't get to that level, whatever is available, we are working towards equitable supply.
Right. So given the unprecedented nature of this pandemic, should companies be required to fully disclose all of their pricing policies, as MSF has argued, so that clients are aware down the line, saying this time next year, if there's a price hike that may come in the future once we're past this particular pandemic?
So it's not a prerequisite for manufacturers to give their prices upfront and make them public, but we have seen estimated costs of different vaccines that have been made public by the manufacturers. They are just estimates. We do not know what the vaccines will actually cost, but the biggest thing that the COVAX facility is working on is to ensure that we have affordable vaccines, that the vaccines are made as affordable as possible. But as I also mentioned before, the manufacturers have really invested heavily into the manufacture and research into these vaccines. So that return on investment needs to be kept at the back of our minds, that the manufacturers need to get out what they put in. But the pricing, the COVAX facility is working really, one of the jobs is to ensure that we negotiate affordable prices.
Right. One last question for you, Doctor. Assuming that there's no equitable distribution of vaccines to deal with COVID-19, because vaccine nationalism has been a huge threat pretty much for the last half of this year, how does that change the forecasts, for the spread of the disease, but also the number of deaths it may cause across the developing world?
The issue of inequitable distribution of vaccines is not something that we can even begin to think about, because all that can be put in place for equitable distribution has been put in place. And why? It's the fact that for assuming that Africa is left behind because our epidemiology is different from the epidemiology in Europe or US, if this virus remains in Africa and mutates, then the rest of the world gets back to zero. So it is in everybody's best interest to make sure that we reduce this virus to the lowest level possible as we can, and in all regions, in every place, and ensure that we do not see this acute phase that has affected us as it has affected us. Otherwise, inequitable distribution is not something that we can even talk about. It's not going to happen.
Indeed. We'll see how this plays out. Dr. Fiona Ghebreyesus, thank you very much.